Before you scroll, read this all the way through, because this is not one of those empty messages that sounds deep for a few seconds and then disappears. This is for the person who pulled their heart back without making a scene. For the person who got tired of giving, explaining, waiting, hoping, and still being treated like they were easy to lose. Someone is thinking about you right now with a kind of pressure they did not expect to feel. Not because you begged for attention, not because you chased them harder, but because you stopped. You became quiet. You stepped back. You chose peace. And that silence is doing what your words could not do. It is making them feel your absence in real time. Stay with me, because this is where it gets real. The one who thought you would always be there is starting to understand what your presence truly meant. They are not just remembering you. They are feeling the space you left behind. And the hardest part for them is this. They do not know if they still have a place in your life. That question is following them into quiet moments, late hours, and the parts of the day where distractions can no longer save them. So if you have been wondering whether your distance changed anything, listen carefully. It changed more than you think. There was a point in your life when something inside you finally said enough. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. You did not need a big goodbye, a final speech, or one last emotional message to prove you were done carrying what was never yours alone. You just got tired in a way that changed you. Tired of being the one who reached first. Tired of trying to explain feelings to someone who only half listened. Tired of checking your phone for energy that came back weak, late, or not at all. And one day, almost without warning, you chose yourself. Quietly, fully. You understood that loving someone should not require losing your balance every single day. You understood that caring deeply does not mean accepting crumbs. You understood that peace is more valuable than confusion dressed up as connection. From the outside, it may have looked small. Maybe you sent fewer messages. Maybe you stopped repeating what hurt you. Maybe you stopped making excuses for behavior that kept cutting you in the same place. But inside, that shift was massive. It was the moment you stopped abandoning yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. And whether they admitted it or not, they felt the change. Not at once, maybe. Not in some dramatic flash. But they felt the rhythm break. They felt your energy pull back. They felt access to you become uncertain. And that is when the story began to turn. For a long time, they were used to your consistency. They were used to your softness, your patience, your effort, your ability to understand even when they gave you very little to work with. They got comfortable with the idea that no matter how distant they became, some part of you would still be there. That was the pattern. You cared. You stayed. You tried again. And when a person gets used to that kind of presence, they stop treating it like something precious. Not always because they are cruel, but because certainty makes people careless. What feels guaranteed often loses urgency, so they stopped protecting what you were offering. They stopped noticing how much emotional space you were holding. They stopped seeing that your love was a choice, not a permanent supply they could pull from whenever they wanted. Then something shifted. You no longer rushed in to fix the silence. You no longer reached into the distance to keep the connection alive by yourself. You stopped proving your value to someone who had eyes, but was not truly seeing. And that quiet change unsettled them more than they expected. At first, they thought it was temporary. They thought you were just busy, tired, distracted, maybe going through a phase. They assumed the old version of you would return. But the days kept moving, and your old patterns did not come back. That is when comfort started turning into confusion. That is when your absence stopped feeling small. The first thing they noticed was not heartbreak. It was interruption. A pause where your message would usually be. A moment when something happened and they wanted to tell you, only to realize they no longer knew if they could reach you the same way. A small silence. Then another. Then more. And over time, those little spaces became louder. Because they were not only missing contact, they were missing the feeling that came with you. The ease. The depth. The way things felt softer when you were there. The way you listened with real attention. The way you noticed details most people ignored. The way you made room for them without turning every moment into pressure. What once felt normal now feels rare, and that is the part they were not prepared for. Stay with this part because it matters. Missing a person is one thing. Realizing how much of your peace lived inside their presence is something else. Now they replay ordinary moments and see them differently. Conversations they barely valued now carry weight. Little acts of care now feel heavy with meaning. Your patience looks different from a distance. Your consistency looks different from a distance. Even your silence looks different from a distance. What they once treated as familiar is beginning to feel almost impossible to replace. And once someone truly notices that, they cannot return to not knowing. Then confusion slowly turns into reflection. They go through their day. They work. They talk. They laugh when needed. They handle responsibilities. But in between all of that, your name keeps passing through their mind. A memory shows up for no reason. A moment with you returns with strange clarity. A sentence you once said suddenly makes sense in a way it did not before. And that is how the deeper shift begins, not with grand emotion at first, but with repeated awareness. They start comparing what they have now with what they had in you. Not always on purpose. It just happens. A conversation lacks depth. A person listens, but not the way you listened. Someone is present, but not in the way you were present. Something feels missing, and that missing keeps pointing back to you. They begin to remember not just what you did, but how you made them feel. Seen, understood, safe enough to be honest. Calm in moments that could have become heavy. Those things seemed simple at the time. Now they feel valuable. Now they feel uncommon. And the more they think about that, the more your absence becomes emotional instead of practical. It is no longer just, we do not talk like before. It becomes, why does everything feel different without them? That question follows them quietly. And quiet questions are often the ones that change people most. With reflection comes something heavier, regret. Not loud regret, not the kind they announce to the world. Quiet regret, the kind that sits behind the eyes when the room is silent. The kind that appears when they replay moments and realize you were telling the truth in ways they did not want to hear. They see the times you reached out and they gave little back. They see the effort you made to understand them while they stayed emotionally lazy. They see the moments you were asking to be met halfway, and they treated that need like it could wait. They assumed there would always be more time, more chances, more access, more of you. But your energy is no longer leaning toward them, and that has created a kind of uncertainty they are not comfortable with. They do not know if they can still reach you. They do not know how you would respond. They do not know whether you still feel anything or whether you have already made peace with leaving them behind. That uncertainty changes everything, because before they felt in control of the connection. Now they do not. Before your care felt predictable, now it feels distant, guarded, maybe gone. And when people realize they are no longer certain of someone's presence, they begin paying attention in a completely different way. Suddenly every memory matters more. Every missed chance feels sharper. Every delayed response, every weak effort, every moment they fail to show up starts carrying emotional weight they were able to ignore before. Now, your name crosses their mind in moments they never expected. In good moments, in bad moments, in random moments that should have had nothing to do with you. They might hear something and think, I wish I could tell them this. They might go through something painful and realize you would have understood this better than anyone else. They might see a place, a time of day, a message style, a word, a song, and feel that quiet pull again. That is when it starts getting deeper than simple memory. They are not just thinking about you. They are understanding your value after the fact. And that kind of realization is powerful because it arrives with contrast. They can now feel the difference between what you brought into their life and what is missing without you there. They can feel that you were not just available. You were meaningful. You added calm. You added depth. You added a kind of emotional steadiness they once treated like background noise. Now they notice it because it is gone. And if you have ever wondered whether silence can speak, this is your answer. Yes, it can. Sometimes silence says, I'm no longer willing to lose myself to stay close to you. Sometimes silence says, you had access to something real, and now you have to face what it feels like without it. Do not skip over that, because this is not about revenge. It is not about making someone suffer. It is about truth finally becoming visible when your effort is no longer covering everything up. As time moves, they begin seeing you differently. Maybe through social media, maybe through shared spaces, maybe only through memory. But the image of you has changed in their mind. You seem calmer now, stronger, more grounded, less desperate to be understood, less willing to break your own boundaries just to keep a bond from falling apart. And that change does something to them. It creates mixed emotion, part admiration, part longing, part fear, because now you do not look like someone waiting at the same emotional doorway. You look like someone who kept walking, someone who learned how to carry their own peace, someone who still has depth, still has heart, still has warmth, but no longer gives endlessly to people who do not know how to hold it. That kind of growth is attractive in a way words cannot easily explain. It pulls attention without asking for it. It says, without speaking, I know what I bring and I no longer need to beg anyone to see it. And they feel that shift deeply. They are not only drawn to who you were when you were close to them, they are drawn to who you are becoming now. Someone more balanced, someone more centered, someone who can love deeply and still leave when love stops being mutual. That combination is rare, and when people recognize something rare after nearly losing it, their feelings tend to intensify fast. This is where longing starts mixing with respect. And respect makes emotion heavier, not lighter. At some point, something even more important happens. They begin to see your silence from your side. They start looking back and understanding that your distance was not random, cold, or dramatic. It was a response. A response to being left with too much weight. A response to explaining yourself over and still not being fully heard. A response to giving more than you were receiving. For the first time, they begin to feel what the connection may have felt like for you. They imagine your disappointment, your emotional tiredness, your private pain, the small battles you fought while still trying to stay kind. And that changes the entire picture, because now your stepping back feels justified. It feels honest. It feels earned. They begin to respect the strength it took for you to stop chasing. And that strength is not easy to overlook. Walking away quietly is often harder than staying in a place that keeps draining you. Choosing yourself without hate, leaving without a performance, protecting your peace without trying to punish anyone. That takes maturity. That takes control. That takes self-respect. And once they truly see that, you stop being only the person who cared. You become the person who had the courage to choose inner peace over emotional chaos. That realization hits hard, not all at once, but steadily. And the more it settles in, the more they feel the full weight of what your presence used to give them. This is usually the point where the urge to reach out begins. They think about sending a message. They open the chat. They type. They erase. They sit with the screen. They imagine different versions of what they could say. Maybe something honest. Maybe something light. Maybe something that sounds casual but carries deeper meaning underneath. But then fear steps in. What if you do not answer? What if you answer politely but with distance? What if you have changed too much? What if you no longer want the kind of closeness they once had without earning it properly? And that fear keeps them frozen. Understand this clearly. Their silence does not always mean lack of feeling. Sometimes it means the feeling is finally strong enough to make the risk terrifying. Because when a person knows they may have lost something important, reaching out no longer feels simple. It feels vulnerable. It feels dangerous. It feels like standing in front of the truth with no guarantee of being welcomed. So they pause, again and again. They watch. They think. They imagine possibilities. They tell themselves they will do it later. Then later comes, and the fear is still there. Meanwhile, the emotion keeps building because unspoken feelings do not disappear just because a person avoids action. Very often they deepen. They grow teeth in silence. They become harder to manage precisely because nothing is being said. And that is the emotional place they may be standing in now. While they are wrestling with all of that, you are somewhere else in your journey. You are learning how to live without reaching for what does not reach back. You are learning how to breathe without waiting for a message to decide your mood. You are learning that your worth is not measured by who failed to recognize it in time. And that growth changes your energy. You still care maybe. You still feel deeply, likely. But now there is more space inside you. More calm. More self-trust. Your peace does not depend on whether someone finally understands what they should have valued earlier. Your days are becoming your own again. Your heart is no longer working overtime to hold together something one-sided. And that difference between where you are and where they are emotionally is part of what makes this so heavy on their side. Because by the time they fully understand your value, you may already be far ahead in healing. By the time they gather the courage to name what they feel, you may already have learned how to live without needing their recognition. That possibility follows them. It unsettles them. It makes every delayed step feel more serious. And still, your path cannot be built around whether they move. This next part matters, so stay with me. Their realization may be real. Their regret may be real. Their longing may be real. But your progress is real too. Your peace matters too. Your healing is not something you should trade away just because someone woke up emotionally after you had to carry the whole weight alone. Now they are no longer only missing what was. They are imagining what could have been. What if they had shown up better? What if they had noticed your value sooner? What if they had taken your words seriously instead of assuming you would always remain available? Those questions keep coming back because the past now looks different through the lens of absence. They can see places where they held back, places where they delayed, places where they did not protect something real because they thought real things would somehow survive without effort. But meaningful connections do not live on assumption forever. They need care, they need honesty, they need mutual weight, and now they understand that much more clearly than before. They see that what you gave was not common. It was not surface-level attention. It was steady, genuine, emotionally present love in the form it knew how to show up. And now that it is no longer offered the same way, they feel the gap sharply. Not just in communication, but in atmosphere, in energy, in the feeling of being understood without needing to overperform. They may try to distract themselves, but quiet moments keep bringing the truth back. That you were never as replaceable as they once acted like you were. That what they had with you carried more depth than they admitted. That your absence has forced them to confront the exact value they once overlooked. And once that realization becomes clear, it rarely fades quickly. Even if they never say it out loud, there is a battle inside them now between regret and hope. Regret says they saw it too late. Hope says maybe not everything is closed. Regret reminds them of every moment they could have done more. Hope whispers that maybe there is still a way to rebuild what was damaged. Regret keeps them looking backward. Hope keeps them imagining one more chance. Holding both at once is not easy. It creates tension. It creates hesitation. It makes them replay possible outcomes over and over. They imagine reaching out and you responding warmly. They imagine reaching out and you being kind but guarded. They imagine reaching out and receiving nothing at all. Every version carries emotional risk, and that risk is why they remain in thought longer than action. But whether they move or not, the internal shift is still happening. You change the emotional weather simply by pulling your energy back and standing in your own worth. You showed them that your presence was chosen, not guaranteed. You showed them that your care was deep but not endless. You showed them that even soft people can step away when the exchange becomes too painful. That lesson stays with people. It follows them. It makes them question themselves more honestly. It makes them see what they once ignored. And if their feelings are growing now, it is not because you performed for attention. It is because your absence created a clear mirror, and in that mirror they can finally see what they had, how they handled it, and what it may cost them to have understood it too late. But listen carefully. This is not a message telling you to go back. It is not telling you to reopen doors that nearly broke you. It is not telling you to send another explanation, another emotional paragraph, another soft invitation into a place where your effort was never fully matched. It is telling you something much more important. Choosing yourself did not make you lose love. It revealed the truth of it. It showed you who valued your heart while they had it, and who only began to wake up when they could no longer reach it so easily. That clarity is a gift, even if it came through pain. Because now you know what peace feels like when it is no longer tied to someone else's inconsistency. Now you know what self-respect feels like when it becomes stronger than loneliness. Now you know that real connection should not leave you constantly confused, drained, or begging to be understood. If they come back, it will not be because you chase them one more time. It will be because they finally felt the weight of your absence, finally understood your value, finally saw that your presence was never something small. And if they do not come back, that still changes nothing about your worth. Read that again in your spirit. Their delay does not reduce your value. Their blindness does not reduce your value. Their silence does not reduce your value. What you gave was real. What you carried was real. What you learned by stepping back is real too. So keep moving the way you have been moving. Quietly, strongly, clearly. Hold on to the version of you that chose peace over confusion. Hold on to the version of you that stopped overextending just to keep a bond alive by force. Hold on to the version of you that learned how to care without disappearing inside that care. Because that version of you is the one that attracts what is balanced, what is mutual, what is honest, what does not need to be begged into existence. Somewhere, someone is learning the value of your presence because they can no longer touch it the same way. Somewhere, someone is realizing that the calm, depth, warmth, and understanding you brought into their life was never ordinary. Somewhere, someone is finally feeling the truth you had to live with long before they ever understood it. And whether they act on that lesson or stay trapped in hesitation, your path remains the same. Keep choosing yourself. Keep choosing what feels steady. Keep choosing the life that does not require self-betrayal to be maintained. Because real love will not ask you to shrink. It will not ask you to chase forever. It will not ask you to bleed just to prove your heart is sincere. Real love meets you in your strength, your honesty, your calm, and your truth. And by stepping back when you needed to, you already proved that you are capable of that kind of love first with yourself, and then with anyone who is truly ready to meet you there. If this touched something deep in you, sit with it, because the shift you made was not small. It changed everything.